ह्यूस्टन यूनिवर्सिटी में मौजूदु आहियूं। असां सां मौजूदु आहे अमेरिका जो मशहूरु लेखक निक फ्लैन, जंहिंजा मुख़्तलिफ़ किताब छपिजी चुका आहिनि ऐं उन मूवीज़ बि उनजे किताब ते ठही चुकी आहे। त असां हिन सां ॻाल्हि ॿोल कंदासूं त मौजूदा जेको अमेरिकी लिटरेचर आहे, दुनिया जो जेको अदब आहे उन मुतलिक़, ऐं उनखां सवाइ असां साणनि ॻाल्हि ॿोल कंदासूं त हीअ जेको अमेरिका जी जेकी transitional society है उन मुतलिक़ उन जी छा राय आहे। Thank you very much, Nick. You gave time to us. So first of all, our viewers want to know that what you have written and what you have when you have started your writings.
Sure, sure. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm really happy to be, part of this project. And I've written I've published 4 books of poetry. I have another one coming out soon, another book. And I've published 4 books of nonfiction, and I've published a play.
Yeah.
And I've been writing my whole life since I was a child. It's just something I was drawn to. Language. Something I was drawn to. The possibilities of it. More so than sciences and the other arts. Just language is the thing that excited me the most and seemed the most difficult, actually, for me, for my...
Actually, you belongs to Houston or from another place?
Yeah, I grew up in Massachusetts, up in the cold Massachusetts, outside a small town outside of Boston. And it wasn't a place where there was... In my house, there were books, but it wasn't a bookish house. It wasn't, writing wasn't something that was honored or, respected necessarily. It was kind of not a respectable thing to do, really.
You are in the Houston University and you teach your students, but the people wants to know that the contemporary literature of America is same as it was in the time of Hemingway, William Faulkner. So this is the same thing, or you think that the decline is you are showing?
I wouldn't think so. Yeah, I'm sure that Hemingway and Faulkner are ones that sort of travel over, to other places. But there's, I think it's a very different world now for writers. Faulkner was very regional, stayed where he was and wrote about his place, and Hemingway had to leave, had to go to Paris and to write, and to Spain in the war. And now, I'm teaching here. This is a unique thing where, I get some support as a writer to be here, and I teach younger writers, and sort of it's almost like a guild system, like an ancient guild system where the art is passed from generation to generation, and when we do it in a community, and we do it with by looking at other books, books of people we admire and people that are doing things that we're trying to understand. And we use those as models for what we're doing as writers. So the difference is that the myth, I think, of the American writer of Hemingway, the individual artist, or Faulkner, the isolated artist, the isolated tortured. They're both tortured drunks. They're both drunks.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we sort of recognize that those are archetypes that are maybe. Those archetypes are maybe not necessary now, or not productive for us at this moment.
We are living in an era where it's coming to be digitalized, and it's coming scientific and more materialistic. Do you think that the contemporary literature at the moment is same as the creative in the past?
Well, I mean, with the new technologies that are out there, I see them as just sort of feeding into the same impulses as, or at least for creative writers. I mean, I see it feeding into the same impulses. The one thing it has done, the explosion of the internet, is to allow us to, to have access, immediate access to writers in other countries. Whether if we can read their languages, of course. But if they're in translation, we can sort of, it's maybe thinner. There's not a few iconic figures that are doing the work, but there's sort of many people that are doing it. It's more of feels like more of a democratization
Yeah, but it's realistic. Life is over there, and do you think that the people who writing nowadays they are more realistic approaches, or they are more literary and another style of writing?
Yeah. Okay, about realism. So yeah, say like Hemingway would be sort of like very sort of close to realism.
Yeah.
Faulkner gets into really gets
Farewell
into
to Arms and Have is Have Not. These
Yeah.
two novels are more realistic.
Yeah. Whereas Faulkner gets more into the mythic and the dreamlike and the internal. He has his book As I Lay Dying. He has a woman who's in a coffin speaking.
Yeah.
Who's dead. She's speaking,
Yeah.
and so I mean he sort of his take on realism really starts to sort of break down the boundaries. And now, I don't think realism is necessarily the the primary driving force in literature in the United States. But I think some elements of it, though, I think there's always like a tension that's really necessary between like what is happening in the world and how we see the world and our perception of the world. I think that's where the tension is right now. It's really an individual's perception on the things that are happening in the world.
Now we come on the short story, which is started from the Gogol and O. Henry to Toni Morrison.
Yeah.
So do you think that same short stories, people's liking her, writing her?
What, short stories?
Yeah, short stories.
Well, I love short stories. I mean, I think they're still like a really vital form. I'm primarily a poet.
Yeah.
And so the short story form, is the closest to my heart for, that's something that isn't poetry because it is distilled. It's so distilled and so contained. The energy is so contained. And there's wonderful, short stories being written right now. I mean, it's still I can name, Lydia Davis, Jamie Quattro, George Saunders. There's always surprise to be found. And
So these are the writings are more creative and literary writings, but there are so many writers who, the best sellers, Daniel Steele, Jeffrey Archer, and Mario Puzo. Do you think these are the real creative writers, or this is the part of literature in the where you are studying here?
Well, no, we wouldn't study that work here. Like the stuff that makes it to the bestseller list is more popular entertainment, I think. And what we study here is literature. We study the difference between it is that a book like say a big bestseller. I mean, Jeffrey Archer, say.
Yeah.
I've never read Jeffrey Archer. I don't know. I shouldn't speak badly of his work, but I assume that it's somewhat more of a passive reading experience. That he just you get led through it by the hand. Whereas literature that I'm interested in is more of an active experience, where you have to engage as a reader. And by being so engaged, you get changed in some way. So it's not like telling you how to feel or how to react to something. It's allowing you to have your own feelings within it.
But Mario Puzo and his book, so they are supposing that now it's the modern classic. So
Puzo. Yeah, Puzo is probably. I don't know. I also haven't read
Godfather.
I've seen the movies. The movies. I haven't actually read Puzo. That was, he was very popular maybe 30 years ago. I don't know of anyone reading Puzo right now, but but the people that have lasted from that time is maybe Garcia Marquez or Toni Morrison. The people that are still read, Borges,
Borges.
Kafka.
Yeah.
Like there's certain people that are still read, but so the ones you're mentioning are sort of more popular, best-selling writers that, and I think that it is that it's more of a passive entertainment rather than an active reading experience.
From the Europe side, when we go to Milan Kundera, and then from Mexico, Garcia Marquez, and from Mr. Arabi and Najib Mahfouz. So do you think that American literature is more close to these kind of things, or the American literature has own style of writings?
Well, I mean, the best we would aspire to be as good as as Marquez or Mahfouz or Borges, and some writers I think get close in America. I think Toni Morrison is I believe Beloved is one of the best books ever written.
Even Derek Walcott too. Derek Walcott.
Walcott, yeah, is a poet. Yeah, you know, we haven't even gotten into the poets in America. I mean, I have a whole long list it's very particular to America, like, because poetry really doesn't get translated very much.
The American poetry reflect the life of American peoples, it's focused on the very inner feelings of the people.
Not always inner feelings. I think what poetry generally does is it pushes the art form of writing. It's always on the avant-garde of the art form. It's always reaching into the unknown and to what has been yet unsaid. That's what poetry does. That's the best part. It's not to sort of feed us something that's been expected that we can understand. It's often to push our understanding into another level. So that's why it's very difficult to translate into other languages sometimes, because it really is about changing the consciousness of the culture it's in, I think.
But the translation is, I think, simple and easy thing that communicate to the other world, other part of the world.
Oh, I would love to have my poems translated into Urdu. I mean, I would love this. You know, my poems have only been translated into a few languages, maybe Spanish, Dutch, not so many. So I would love it if it was, of course, we'd love to be.
What kind of response you have got from that kind of from these languages? Are you satisfied that the translation was good?
I've been able to, I can read French, and so I understand, like, my memoir, my nonfiction books that have been translated into French. I understand. I can look at those and understand that's a very good translation, and I can understand. I spent some time in Italy, and I can understand my Italian translation is maybe not such a good translation, because I can look at it and see that. And I have Italian friends that who read both and say that the translation is not so good. So, and I think that's difficult, because I would like it to be a very good translation always.
So during the K economy period, this the knowledge era, we are openly and saying that this is the knowledge economy is where we are living in the era. So do you think that we input these kind of things in the literature, or the literature is another thing?
I think that would be wonderful. I mean, right now when they say the knowledge economy, I think mostly like, what America opens its doors to, to scientists or to, chemists or something, mathematicians, but not so much to poets, I don't think. I don't think that, that's not the type of intellectual exchange that the U.S., the government of the U.S. is looking for, but the people, I think, would appreciate it a great deal.
But this kind of dealing we have saw recently in the Orhan Pamuk's novel Sinu and My Name is Red.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example of someone crossing over and making a big impact in the United States. Yeah. And there's always a trend. Saramago is huge in America. Pamuk is enormous. I love the poems of Nazim Hikmet from Turkey. We have many Arabic poets that are translated. I mean, not enough, but we have some. And
the other literature which is focusing on the inner of the man, that called mysticism. We call in the Sufism in our area. So do you think this kind of literature is most popular and people like here in America?
Well, I mean, there's a tradition of reading, mystical poetry, which can translate. Rumi, of course, and even we have our own like sort of transcendental poets here in America. From Whitman took on transcendental motifs, and I think there's always part of poetry is understanding, pushing into the unknown and pushing into what we can't see and what we can't fully contain in our daily existence. So there's always been a place for mystical poetry, and from other cultures, it's,
And in developing areas, we have seen that the poets impacts on the revolutions, and they are also involved in the politics. So do you think here is same condition, the poet of America involved in the politics, and they encourage politics, inspire the politics?
Yeah, but that's a big question. I've written, it's a difficult thing in America for some reason. Adrian Rich was, one of our great poets, Adrienne Rich, and she was a deeply political poet. And when she went to other countries and read, if she went to South America and read, she could fill a stadium. Like thousands of people would come to hear her. Where in America, she was just a regular poet. Like not, we'd get hundreds of, she was very popular, but not like, and the reason was because there's some, I don't understand what it is, the deep discomfort in America with having a political stance within poetry. I don't really understand it. I've written a book. My last book of poetry was deeply political. Probably would be read less than my other books.
So
yeah, it will be read less.
So they recite in the when the people gathers and those peoples recite the poetry or not?
Oh,
the
we
political
do.
gatherings.
Oh, we do. Yeah, we gather, and we've done it even more too. Like there's always going to be a place for it. Right now we had many. This past year we had many problems in America around race. With primarily with black youth or black citizens getting killed by police, and there's been poetic responses to that. There's been many poetic responses that are. I mean, this is one right here actually. This book here, Citizen.
Okay.
Citizen by Claudia Rankin. Do you know this book?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a wonderful book, and this is a political.
I haven't.
This is a book of poetry.
As
you can see, I've read it quite a bit. I have many post-its in it. And it's a political response to race in America.
So,
and it's a huge book. This has sort of transcended most books of poetry. It's sold many copies, this book.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have observed that I have never seen or read a book about the countryside of America as the pastime Pearl Esberg. Before that, Austin Jane written about the countryside of America.
More pastoral.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's traditions of pastoral. There's a whole, there's many strains of poetry in America, many branches to the tree.
Yeah.
There's the deeply personal, the deeply lyric, which is dealing with the inner psychology. There's the political, Claudia's book is on that branch. My last book would be on that branch.
Yeah.
There's the eco-poetics. That's a whole other branch. There's a whole branch of eco-poetics, which is dealing with the natural world, but in like a political stance, like seeing the devastation that we're causing to the earth through a poetic lens and trying to sort of figure it out with poetry, trying to come up with new solutions, like poetic solutions that maybe will be applied, ways of seeing the world and seeing the world in a different way than we're seeing it. So. Because we see the crisis.
So, Frank, how much you are optimistic about the O. Henry class of storytelling is dying in America?
That the O. Henry style of storytelling?
Yeah, storytelling.
What do you mean the O. Henry style?
It's more classical and more people's left to read, and it's very near to life.
Oh, I mean, people still, no, there's still a place.
As Chekhov's style in the Russia and the continuity of that is Canadian writer Alice Munro.
Yeah. No. I don't think they're dying at all. No, I don't think they're. No, not at all. No, Alice Munro is like wildly loved.
Yeah,
and
Canada.
Chekhov is still read and performed all the time. Yeah. O. Henry may be a little less, maybe not as popular right now. But J.D. Salinger, for short story writer. I mean, and these are just sort of
Virginia Woolf.
Yeah. Those are these are the what we have to read. We have to read these books.
In American literature, the impact of European literature, how much they have taken up.
Of what?
European literature is how much inspired the American writers.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, I think it's.
The Asian literature too.
Asian literature also.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's always Pound. Modernism began with Pound and translating the Chinese and bringing in these strains of mysticism. There's always been a back and forth, we find like different entries into other cultures by reading other cultures. I mean, it's so important. The world is getting it's getting smaller and more charged, and it's even more for the understanding. I mean, a big thing is like, that I don't think we understand right now enough about Pakistan.
Yeah.
say, for example,
Yeah.
for a country. You know, it's a
And
country
for,
that.
yeah, yes, it's so great literature over there.
Yeah,
The Intezar Hussein's novel
Yeah.
was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize here in America.
Yeah, it was, yeah. Whose novel?
Intezar Hussein's novel Basti, its name was Basti Village.
Yeah, was it originally published in
Yeah,
Urdu?
originally published in Urdu, then translated in English.
When was it nominated? I didn't
Yeah,
notice.
2 years ago.
Oh my gosh, wow. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I have to find this
So,
book. I
yeah.
have not read this book, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to find it.
So this kind of literature is over there in Pakistan and India. So
yeah.
how much impact on the American literature?
Well,
As so popular Khushwant Singh, do you hear about it? The Indian most popular, most readable writer in the Europe and Asia.
Yeah. Like, who is the most popular?
Yeah, Khushwant Singh.
Khushwant
Singh.
Yeah. I don't know this one.
And
either,
the Indian-born lady is here, Jhampa Lahiri.
Yeah. Well, Jumpa. Yeah. Yeah, we know Jumpa. Yeah. We read Jumpa Lahiri. Yeah.
So this kind of literature impact on the your younger writers or not? Yeah, they are not close to literature of that kind of.
Oh yeah, no. Like say some break through. Like I say, like some will definitely like Jhumpa Lahiri, broke through in a big way. The winner of the Pulitzer Prize last year was for poetry was an Indian author, Vijay Seshadri. Yeah, and there's always a complication with the prizes because the prizes seem because there's many very qualified books, and it's random sort of who gets chosen sometimes. But it's great. It's great that Vijay won because it's a very good book. It's a beautiful book, So.
If you are talking about the prizes, do you think the Nobel Prize is more political?
What seems to be, yeah, right. Like but in a good way. I mean, I like the politics generally.
But it's the impression is that sometime the original, the deserving peoples are not getting the prize, and someone.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to. I try to just sort of. The good part about the prize is that it exposed, like the Nobel Prize, it does expose people in America to literature they might not have read, because usually it's not an American that's picked, and so it's, and it does get a lot of energy around it. So, but I'm sure there must be many. It'd be nice to know who the short list was, so who all the other people were. I think that'd be a thing to study, to see who else is.
In some days I have observed in the America where I visited, that it's looking like a mini world. So many people are coming around the world from the various areas. I think there is no any continent the peoples are not here. So do you think that this multicultural literature is right? Peoples are writing here that impact on the writings of the laureates of the America?
Yeah, well, I would think so. I mean, you saw, my workshop that I have here is like, it's a mixture of many folks. One woman who is missing tonight is from Sierra Leone, and there's Korean, from Korean ancestry, from Latino ancestry, from all over. We generally in this like workshop environment, like where this is one place it's taught. Obviously, things are written elsewhere outside of the academy, of course, but in this there really does seem to be like a real mixing and a blending of people's viewpoints. That's why to get to sit in a room with people from all different backgrounds and to have like this sort of conversations. And how people see the literature and what they're getting from it, it can only make the work better. It can only make the work.
I want to get an example. There's a Paulo Coelho.
Paulo Coelho? Yeah.
Who has written some books, and
he sold many books.
Yeah, so many books and novels. So he has a variety about these multicultural things, an alchemist, and so. I want to ask you that in America, where we are seeing that this is looking a mini world. So this kind of literature, the American writers are writing, they are only focusing on their society, American society.
Is that true? Yeah, it might be. Maybe primarily you could be true, but I think that would come from a sense that what we have. And I'm not talking about novels actually so much. I'm talking more about like, when I think about nonfiction or something like or poetry even. the trouble with that is that I think the fear people have, I think, is that they're going to write what they would call a tourist poem. You know, you go to another culture and you see something that interests you that you don't understand, and you write something about it. And that's sort of a genre of writing that's not deeply respected, because we're not deeply involved in that aspect of it. But to try to understand something, one of the last books I wrote, and the last book of poetry, the political one, and there's a memoir that went with it called The Ticking is the Bomb, and then the poetry is called The Captain Asked for a Show of Hands, and the two are sister books. And that deals with the war in Iraq, and it deals with specifically the detainees in Abu Ghraib, who were the Iraqi detainees who were tortured by U.S. military personnel. Mm-hmm. And in order to write that book, I ended up meeting the Iraqis that were in the photographs, that were photographed being tortured at Abu Ghraib. And I couldn't have really written the book unless I had done that. Like, you really had to sort of commit yourself to, to going to the place and really deeply understanding it in order to write about it. Otherwise, but that seemed to me an important thing to do. Since we were bombing Iraq, it seemed like my responsibility as a writer, but also as a U.S. citizen, to go and sort of see it, to witness it in some way, and to bring something back. So, and I think there's many people that do that do go and try to understand it from a certain perspective, and there's others that don't. I mean, it depends on the person, the writer. But I think it seems really important to do.